some of these back. I mean, if you want, you can move the whole living room. Make themselves at home. Yeah. All right. Hey, tech crew, we good? Tell me when you're ready, guys. Hello. Mic's on. Can you hear me? It doesn't really matter that you hear me. It's more important that you hear Jabari. Now, because we're adequately socially distanced, do we agree? These tables are 6 feet. We're all here. When he speaks, he's going to take his mask off, so it'll be like a good distance from. I just want to thank you guys for coming. I wrote like a little intro just when I was outside welcoming you in here. So, but I'm going to bring it, Jabari. This is some of my best work. So, first of all, I want to thank you guys for coming. You know, we have these service nights every month, and we usually have about like 100 to 150 kids, and we do like hands-on projects. And as you would imagine, that's not really a possibility right now. So we decided instead to bring speakers in every month to kind of inspire you and share their stories. And for our first speaker, we decided to ask Jabari Jackson. Jabari graduated from PHS in 2010, and he's going to talk to us tonight about his life, his experiences, an organization he created to kind of make the world a better place called Respect My Life. He's going to talk about social justice, racism, and kind of just being an awesome human being, which he is, and I think you'll see now. He started Respect My Life, which is like a nonprofit charitable organization, a service organization with his friends as a way to give back to the community and to try to help people just be better humans, okay? They do peanut butter and jelly drives. Raise your hand if you've been to a peanut butter and jelly drive at PHS. Great fun, right? Good times? Well, I think we did like 3,500 sandwiches last time. Jabari then takes those sandwiches and then delivers them to homeless shelters to eat. He does clothing drives, water collections, charity walks. You've gone into inner cities to give haircuts for people, right? That's one of my favorite things ever, Jabari. That is the coolest thing. People always talk about doing good things and making the world a better place, and Jabari ridiculously does that, you know, all the time. He's always looking for ways to help people make this world better. He's a mentor, a volunteer, an advocate, a servant, a coach. If you follow Respect My Life on social media and Instagram, you'll see all these positive messages that he's sending out there. Last June, right, early June, he organized, in response to the killing of George Floyd, he organized a peaceful march and demonstration that started at Parsippany High School and ended at Veterans Park. And if you were there, there was an amazingly powerful and beautiful event that highlighted the importance of social justice and equal rights and putting an end to racism. And Jabari did an incredible job, and I was unbelievably proud of you that day. You were just unbelievable. So when you talk to Jabari, and Sai, you were talking to him a little bit before he showed up, this positivity just like oozes out of him. He's just a ridiculously positive and energetic guy. And I admire him because, again, he talks about making the world a better place, and then he goes and does it. And there's love in this guy's heart. And we're so lucky to Jabari Jackson. I should get a wipe for this, but I washed my hands 2 seconds ago. All right. It's a paranoid world. All right. Oh, man. I promise I don't have corona, guys. I promise. My glasses on, I really can't see.
Good? All right, we gotta get a little more energy than that. How you guys doing? Good, great. I heard great. Who said great? That's awesome. That's awesome. So we're going to talk a little bit today, guys. First off, I appreciate you guys for coming out. I know this is very weird times. Obviously, I'm looking at you. I can't even see the smiles or frowns or if you guys are sticking your tongue out at me right now. But I appreciate you guys all for coming out. especially for Dr. Maroney for having me, obviously PHS for having me. I used to walk these same halls, so this is weird, kind of being back in my alma mater to kind of talk to before and some unfamiliar faces. But let me get into who I am a little bit. So, Jabari. I don't usually like talking about myself, but I'm going to do it right. My name is Jabari. I'm 28 years old. I started out in Newark, New Jersey. Spent first 11 years of my life until I was about in 5th grade. Went through a lot of stuff for a guy who was 11 years old, a young kid who was 11 years old. Got the opportunity, my mother actually got the opportunity to purchase a house in Parsippany that was way under the value of most of these houses right now. And we were able to move, and I ended up in Parsippany, New Jersey. And that was probably the best decision that my mother ever made for me. And I'll backtrack it a little bit. So I grew up in a single-family home, just my mother. My father had other obligations other than being a parent at the time, and which is fine, I went through some tough times as a kid, growing up in Newark, battling through, gang violence, the drugs out there, people trying to get to you in the utmost worst way. And I came here to Parsippany, and I started looking around. I'm like, there's a lot of color in Parsippany. And what I mean by that is there's so many different shades of color. And I was very thankful for that. So I think that one of the best things about Parsippany is obviously the diversity. Would you guys agree? Second most diverse town in the county? You guys would agree, right? And so when I got to Parsippany, it was very much a culture shock for me. Very much so a culture shock. I was used to being in a classroom where out of 25, 26 kids, all of us were African American or Hispanic. And then I got to Parsippany, and it looked like I was sitting in the UN, right? Everybody's different shades, different colors, and everything along those lines. And when I got to Parsippany, I realized that there was a lot of things that were being said, and I didn't necessarily know how to react. So I reacted in other ways that Newark taught me how to react, which was being much more aggressive. And so I found myself getting into more altercations than I should have. I found myself getting in trouble more than I should have. And so fast forward a couple years, I got the opportunity to sit down in a lady's classroom who happened to be Mrs. Mulrooney. I'm sure you guys will know who that is. And to this day, I honestly, I'm not going to lie, I could probably name about 8 teachers I've had in middle school and high school, and she's probably one of them. And I learned one of the best lessons from Mrs. Mulrooney's classroom. See, I was about 7th grade, and I was acting a fool in her class. And Dr. Mulrooney might know about it, but I was acting a fool in her class. And all of a sudden, she comes to me one day, and she goes, "I'm going to move you to honors English." What? What? Honors English? No shot. My friends are all here. She called my mother that day. They moved me to honors English, and I thought that was very weird. I'm like, I'm acting up in your class. Why would you move me somewhere? And she moved me to honors English because she said, you know what? You're bored in my classroom. You're not being challenged enough. And I thought about that. And so I went from being a guy who was getting A's in her class easily to struggling to get the C and probably being one of the last, the lowest performing student in the class. And I took that lesson, I let it carry on through the rest of my life, actually. And so when I think about the times where I'm sitting there doing something that, seems very comfortable or I'm very bored, I took that lesson and I sat there and said, you know what, it's because I'm not challenging myself enough. So one of the things I want to tell you guys, I'm going to drop a couple things on you guys today, but one thing about, first off, is making sure that you're always in the process of growing, okay? Always making sure you're always in the process of growing. It's very important. And see, what I could tell you that is a guy who's 28 years old can still remember something that his 7th grade teacher when he was 12, 13 years old taught him. And what that allowed me to do is kind of propel myself to another level. So all of a sudden that the kid who was misbehaving in 7th grade got put in honors class, and all of a sudden my whole perspective changed. I ended up getting very good grades in 8th grade and ended up to ship me off to senior all prep high school for a few years. And so I did that for a few years, excelled very well, had a lot of success inside the classroom and on the basketball court. And unfortunately, things fell through for my family, and I had to come back to Parsippany High School because we ran into some financial trouble. And when I got back to Parsippany, I noticed that there was a lot of people doing some things that necessarily weren't good. And I think that we all can identify, right? Like we have our friends who may involve great activities that are kind of going on like this today, and then we have people who are not doing so many great things. Raise your hand if you know what I'm talking about, right? Absolutely, absolutely. And what I was able to do from that moment on, I was able to keep myself focused, and I realized a little bit different than everybody else's. You know, I wasn't into going out to the parties and, you know, doing an underage drinking thing and getting involved in the drugs and everything like that. I was very into trying to better myself, whether it was in the basketball court or in the classroom. So fast forward, I get to college, and I didn't do as well as I should. Let's just put it that way. Definitely didn't do as well as I should. And I battled through a lot of adversity. I'm assuming you guys all know what that word means, right? Everybody knows what adversity means. Now, raise your hand if you could tell me if you've been through adversity or not. Raise your hand. Nobody's been through adversity? Interesting. You guys have a good life, huh? Have a good life. All right, cool. So I went through a lot of adversity come college, you know, whether it was my father getting locked up for a little while, very bad breakups, and I started to really kind of understand what the word adversity really meant. And with that, I was able to kind of transform my way of thinking. See, life is all about perspective. And I want you guys to remember that. Life is all about perspective. It's how you view things. And so as I looked at the situations that were kind of going on in my life at the time, I realized I'd been here before, right? But I wasn't willing to give up. And see, what you're going to realize is that everything that you're going through right now will ultimately change into something you made it through. So for those of you who failed to raise your hand as far as adversity, in this room has kind of gone through some tough times, and those times where you thought that you really couldn't make it through, you did, and now something to kind of look back on it, and it kind of made you a lot stronger. It made you a lot stronger. So fast forward. So I'm finishing up college. I ended up getting a job being an educator in Newark, New Jersey, back home. So I get myself involved in giving back to the kids and doing everything that I need to do and being a mentor, and it was phenomenal, and I missed it. I missed it. I missed the area. I missed the life. I missed being around kids that felt like they needed me. And that's where I kind of got the idea of the whole respect my life. And so raise your hand again if you've been to a PB&J drive. Awesome. And see, what you don't realize is that when you kind of come to one of those PB&J drives, what you do is you actually are putting yourself in a position to not just give back, but to also give some reward to yourself. See, I'm a firm believer in that giving back is cool. Protecting your mental health is cool. Complimenting somebody is cool. Doing the right thing is cool. Sticking up for what's right is cool. I'm a big, firm believer in that. And see, what a lot of people don't realize is that everybody wants to give back and wants to do things and everything like that, but they never follow through. So like Dr. Maroney said, I'm one of those few people who actually do follow through. And not to kind of toot my own horn, but life taught me that adversity is very small, right? And it's all about how you look at it. It's all about how you look at it. So am I going to look at it as something that's going to paralyze me? Or am I going to look at it as something that's going to help me grow? And so the Respect My Life mission is that we formed a unified culture that focuses on empowerment and understanding, allowing each of us to pursue our purpose of freedom. Can I ask you a question? What does that mean to you? No, say what you're going to say. Gotcha. She said empowerment and freedom are what helps you grow as a person. And I agree. I agree. What does empowerment mean? Gotcha. That's awesome. What does unity mean to you? What does unity mean to you? Togetherness. That's awesome. What does freedom mean to you? That's awesome. That's awesome. And I appreciate you guys for forcefully volunteering. All right. And so when I came with the whole respect my life way, I sat back and I thought about it. I said, you know, how can I put people in a position to, one, feel good about themselves, to, two, be able to give back, 3, be able to bring people together, and 4, be able to give people the sense of freedom, right? Feel like they have control over kind of what's going on. And let me ask you guys an honest question. Who feels now that we're more divided now than ever before? Raise your hand. I'm not going to put the blame on anybody, right? I'm not going to go into this whole political talk, but we seem very divided right now. Would you agree? Right? Everything you see, whether it's, I don't know if you guys are on Facebook, but obviously I'm assuming most of you guys have Instagrams, and you see it. You see it. You'll find that people who were friends before, all of a sudden not friends now because of views and how they see the world. It's weird, isn't it? Life wasn't like this 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And now we're getting older, so we're starting to understand more. Yeah, of course. We're developing. We're growing. We're growing. We're battling through some things, and we're becoming better human beings. But when do we get to the point where all of a sudden division is okay? And when is division led to success? And the answer is it never has. It never has, right? So I'm going to be honest with you guys, right? When I was here about 10 years ago, the things that you guys have going on right now, we didn't really have that kind of stuff. I love the fact of the direction that Dr. Maroney has taken into making this school more unified, whether it's the Humans of Par High page, whether it's, making the service night so everybody can be accountable and kind of come and cheer the team on, cheer the basketball team on, the football team, or just come in and sit here and listen to somebody talk. This right here is unity. And you guys don't even see it. It's unity. And it's a great thing. But when we step out of this building, all of a sudden, we realize that we're back in the real world, and there's a lot of division. So one of the things I want to ask you guys, and this is a rhetorical question, how are you keeping things unified within your friends, within your own homes, right? Within your classroom or virtual classroom? What are you guys doing? And it's tough. It's a tough thing to answer, right? Because not everybody always has the answer. But you know what the best thing you could do is just be yourself. The best thing you could do right now is be yourself with the open heart, the open mind that you do have. Because unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there who don't have the same kind of mindset that you and I have. There's a lot of people out there that are very happy about the division going on in the world. And here we are, we're going to try to make it better. So Mr. Maroney talked about the June 2nd rally. Was anybody able to participate or walk? What'd you think? Very powerful. What'd you think, if you don't mind me asking? Yeah. Awesome. Who else was there, if you don't mind raising your hand? What'd you think? It was something that was very much needed, right? Very much needed. Now, it's funny because we were out there marching for, in response to the George Floyd incident, but we were marching for Black Lives. But what I saw was about a crowd of about 80% of people who were right? Powerful. And to be honest, as I was standing up there, I was thinking the same thing to myself. That right there was unity. All of us come together for a simple purpose, right? Something we all believed in. And simply being ourselves, we know that that's wrong. We know that that situation and the way people are treated is very wrong. And that was unity. And so what June 2nd taught me, and I'm sure it taught a lot of you guys, is that it's not about the intensity of your actions, but it's about the frequency. I'll repeat that one more time. It's not about the intensity of your actions, it's about the frequency of your actions. So backdated to even, like I said, talking about myself for a second, a lot of the stuff that I've done in the past couple of years just goes back to the individual and the person I've grown to be post-middle school. So nothing's really changed. So I stayed consistent throughout the entire time. Fortunately enough, aligned, well in order. And so what I'm going to say to you guys is as you're going through your sports teams and you're going through your classrooms, you're going through life obstacles or that adversity that you will ultimately face, remember that it's not about the intensity, but it's more so about the frequency of how you do things. So if you're that football player, It's not about just going hard on Monday at practice. It's about doing a great job Monday through Friday at practice. If you're a great student, it's not about studying the night before exam. It's about taking that week beforehand, 2 weeks beforehand, to make sure that you're very on track, to make sure that you're successful. Can I ask you guys a question? And if you don't mind, can I ask you a question in the back? What's probably the hardest battle you faced so far in high school? Mm-hmm. Right. If you don't mind, can you name one for me? Getting over that adversity. We call it adversity at the time, right? Getting over adversity. Anybody else? Balancing out everything. So that goes back to that frequency over frequency over intensity. What about you, Mr. Notre Dame sweatshirt? Now, how do you guys give me a thumbs up if you feel pretty good about the school year, the way you approach the school year so far? Oh, I might need to email some of these teachers over here. I want to tell you guys something, that the best thing you can do is always just be yourself. The best thing you can do in life is just be yourself. Be unapologetically you. And honestly, one of the questions one of the answers I was kind of looking for was, you know, it's a little tough to sometimes kind of fit in. I think high school, and you know, for the people in the back who probably attest to that, it's very tough to kind of find your niche in high school, to find who you are in high school, right? Sometimes you're bouncing around from friend group to friend group, right? Sometimes you're a little like, oh, well, this person's cool. I want to try this clothing style. I want to try to be like this. You're in that phase where you're like, I'm trying to figure out myself out, you know? I'm trying to figure myself out. But one of the best things you could do is just be you. And what that means, that person who has a good heart, do it to the fullest. Be that big heart to the fullest. If you're that person that goes out and gives back, do it to the fullest. If you're that person that's a great leader, do it to the fullest. And see, the world will thank you subconsciously later on in the end for just being you. It's easier to keep up with that rather than that intensity when you just continue to be yourself. I want to switch gears a little bit to talk about social justice, talk about racism. Can you guys do me a favor? Raise your hand if you experience racism in these hallways, or even just in general. One. Yeah, just one? Okay. 3. Raise your hand if you've seen racism. Thank you. Raise your hand if you've seen racism happen to somebody else outside of yourself. Now, for those people who raise their hand, can you keep your hand raised? Now, put your hand down if you did something about it. Okay. That's good. For the most part, you guys all kind of put your hands down. And some of y'all just probably like, I'm not going to try to get called out. I don't want to look like the bad guy. I don't look like I didn't do anything. But I'm going to be honest. Even me as an African-American male, there's been times where I've experienced racism. When it comes your time, having the mindset That you're not just voting for yourself, but you're voting for the person next to you, voting for your neighbor, voting for your friend, voting for your Hispanic American friend, voting for your African American friend, voting for your Islamic American friend, voting for your Asian American friend. Those things are what matters. See, we in Parsippany, and I'll use this word very, very definitively, we are very privileged. And I think we all can kind of shake our heads and say we are, correct? We are. And even myself, very privileged. I'm privileged in the sense that out of the 13% of African Americans that are in the United States, I'm part of 3% who don't live in the urban area. That's privilege. I got the chance to experience the hallways where I'm walking down one side, you know, I run into a few Hispanic Americans. I walk down the other side, I'm running into a couple Asian Americans. And even look at the stores, right? You go down Beverwick this way, you go down 46 this way, you see a bunch of different cultural restaurants, right? You go down 46 that way, you see a bunch of different cultural restaurants. That's privilege. We get the opportunity to understand each other. We get the opportunity to experience other people's cultures. But not every place is like that. Not every place is like that. And so as we kind of talk about more of the social justice thing, what are we doing to protect our neighbors? What are we doing to protect our friends? What are we doing to protect our families? What are we doing to protect our community? And what are we doing to protect our country? Because I would say, I think we all can agree for the most part, we all are pretty much thinking the same way. Racism is wrong. But will we agree that there's a lot of people out there who don't think so? Or who don't even think it's a thing? They look at it like, no, racism has been over. No, it hasn't. We know it. We know it. Whether you're getting called a certain name, whether people are saying that you talk white, whether people are saying you talk black, you dress a certain way. First of all, probably one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. You can't dress a color. You can't talk like a color. You can't act like a color. And how many of you have heard that expression before? Talking white, talking black, dressing white, yep. It's a real thing. And I found myself, it's funny that when I found myself coming to school in Parsippany, everybody kept saying like, yo man, you talk black. And I'd be like, yeah, I do. Yeah. Like kind of owning it. And I was like, wait, hold up. I didn't realize that was actually a form of racism. Because there's no such thing. And see what people say, like when sorry, when topics like that kind of come up, they're trying to tell you something. Can I ask you a question? Either or. Can I ask you a question? What does talking black mean? Mm-hmm. It is, right? It is. And I'm sorry if I made you feel uncomfortable with that question, but that's just the reality of which we're being dealt with right now, right? The reality of it is this is our world right now. Can I ask you a question? What does talking white mean? Sorry, my man right here. Yeah. Gotcha. Hope I didn't make you feel uncomfortable. A little bit, right? And that's fine. You know, I'm actually challenging some of you guys to kind of get out of your comfort zone a little bit, because those are the type of conversations you got to have with those kind of people, right? So if you're comfortable enough answering that question, I know you'll be comfortable enough to call somebody out when they're doing it. So I thank you guys. Thank you. So let's go back to this talking white, talking black thing. So when I heard it, I'm like, yeah, man, yeah, I talk black, yeah. And I went home one day. I was like, yeah, Ma, everybody tells me I talk black. She was like, what? Went down to the school, caused havoc. And next thing you know, my family was responsible for the next assembly that happened at school about racism, ironically, right? And see, what you don't realize is that when you say those kind of things to people, you're taking away from a person's culture. Your culture is beautiful. 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 Everybody, being you is beautiful. And so for me to dress a certain way, to act a certain way, to talk a certain way, shouldn't be defined by a color. And if anything, it just either takes away or adds value to another culture that shouldn't be there. Would we agree? Right? Because if you're going to sit there and tell me that I talk a certain way, well, what you're trying to say is that the opposite of that would be that maybe I sound white. Now, what does talking white mean? Have you heard that expression before? Have you heard that expression before? You talk proper? So what's the opposite of proper? A little uncomfortable, right? Raise your hand if you feel uncomfortable with this conversation right now. That's good. That's a good problem to have. So badly I want to keep walking back and forth because I'm not used to this whole podium thing. What you guys have to understand is that going forward, you have an obligation to yourself, to your family, and to your community. A lot of you guys are friends with people outside your races, people outside your ethnic backgrounds, and it's a great thing. But unfortunately enough, there's a lot of communities that don't get the chance to experience what we get the chance to experience. There's a lot of communities out there that are very fixated on thinking a certain way. There are a lot of people out there who are challenging the right way to go about things and do things. My organization does a lot of mentorship. We do a lot of give back. And it doesn't matter what you look like. I include everyone. I always say if you show up to an event, you're part of what we call the RML family. If you show up to a drive or you donate, you're part of the RML family. I don't care what you look like. I don't care where you come from, what you're wearing, or how you talk. Everyone's included. Because I know that if you show up, we're on the same mission. And nothing can stop a team that's fighting the same mission. Nothing. You guys all have a gift in every single one of you. And I truly believe that. Your gift might be to be the next All-Star Notre Dame. Your gift might be the president next 30 years. Your gift might be to be a very intellectual speaker going forward. Each and every one of you has a lot of gifts.
what do you do with that gift? How do you inflict good change with that gift? I think we all can agree that we want to see things change for the better. No matter if you're that cashier at ShopRite or the CEO of Prudential Center. Everybody wants to see some kind of change. So I challenge every single one of you tonight when you go home to think about what you can do to bring about more positive change within yourself, within your family, within your community. How can you be a part of what we try to make the majority? How can we unify together more? How can we limit the unnecessary comments on Twitter and Facebook, Instagram? How can we do that? How can we all see that at the end of the day we're all just fighting the same mission? Going back to the fact that you guys are all special. Anybody ever seen the movie Coach Carter? Coach Carter? Remember Timo Cruz in the movie? Remember that quote that he said? Our deepest fear?
Oh, I don't remember the rest of it, but I know what you're talking about.
The quote goes, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We were all meant to shine, as children do. It's not just in some of us, it's in every one of us. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Powerful stuff, right? Powerful stuff. And see, I live by that quote. I live by that quote. I think that we all have the ability to shine in different ways. I think we all have gifts that we can use to better ourselves, better our community, better our country. I think we all are just dealing with this fear of how great we can really be sometimes. I think we all letting adversity sometimes strike us a little harder than it should. I think sometimes we allow adversity to paralyze us in ways that it shouldn't. I think that when it comes down to it, we're all amazing human beings. A lot of us are. Some of us are. Okay. I think we're all amazing human beings. And we all have the ability to inflict change within ourselves and one another. I think we're all amazing in the sense where we can be understanding of each other's differences and continue to still move forward hand in hand. I think we're all amazing in the sense that we can end racial injustice. I think we're all amazing in the fact that we can march together for a common purpose. I think we're all amazing for the fact that we can love together. And the key word is love. So when we think about shining the way children do, when we think about letting go of our own fears of just being great, we allow ourselves to tap into another person. We allow ourselves to tap into that area that we're afraid to go into. We're allowing ourselves to tap into greatness. And greatness is within every single one of you guys. And so I hope that when you guys leave here today, you feel empowered to do whatever you set your mind to. Whether it's to open up your own eyelash company. Whether it's to open up your own sneaker store. Whether it's to go to the moon. Or whether it's just to be a great father and great husband one day. Whether it's to be the dope principal like Mr. Maroney is. I don't know what? The dope principal. Whatever it is. I challenge you guys to think about those things. I challenge you guys to be better people. I challenge you guys to think just not what myself in mind, but think with each other in mind. So I think of yourself in mind, think with each other in mind. I challenge you guys to love a little harder. How many of you guys follow Respect My Life page? I don't know if you guys. I had a video that we released as a spoken word about a year ago now. It's called Stop Teaching Hate. And the object of that spoken word was for us to realize that what we do now only manifests into something greater in the future. So think about that. What you do now only manifests into something greater in the future. So whether you have children, whether you're around children, you show them a lot of hate, it's going to lead to you feeling like you have what you want. You show them a lot of love, what does that lead to? And we've seen it. We've seen our friends, we've seen it in our families. Some of you guys might have things going on at home. What you teach now manifests something greater in the future. Now mind you, as you're going throughout your days, going throughout your classrooms, you're having that really rough day, you're having that really rough time, or something happened at home, just understand what you're teaching the next person behind you. There's somebody always watching you. There's somebody always watching you. It's a little frightening to think about, but at the same time, it should give you some sense of empowerment. Like, I do have an obligation. And you don't realize how small it is, whether it's your little cousin, whether it's your little brother or sister. So what you teach them will only manifest into something greater in the future. What do you choose, hate or love? Yes. Love, right? What do you choose, hate or love? Love. What do you choose, hate or love?
Love.
And see, I think that's the way we kind of overcome a lot of what's going on in the world. Is with a lot of love. Now, I'm not going to sit up here and drop you a whole bunch of king quotes, right? But the same kind of concept, I think that's where we get to where we want to get to. I think that's when we start flourishing as a country. The hate's got to go. And so what we got to do is check ourselves sometimes. That's very important. Whether it's on social media, whether it's bullying our friends, whether it's tearing people down, love's got to win in order for us to move forward. Because clearly the hate, it's not working. The hate has just led to a bunch of division. And so I encourage you guys.
No, okay, I was hoping that these guys could maybe ask some questions at the end.
Oh, yeah.
I'm such a jerk. I'm sorry, Jabari.
So
I encourage you guys.
As you guys go forward, with everything we just kind of talked about today, remember that each and every one of you can shine the way children do. Each and every one of you is capable of showing love. And each and every one of you deserves the love in return. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I do want to open up the floor with questions to people, people may have. If you want to ask me, you can ask me anything. I'm an open book. I am very easygoing. Share my experiences, share anything. It's up to you guys. Any questions? You asked me about basketball stats for back in the day.
I'm gonna warm them up. I think I have a good one.
Yeah.
So Jabari, June 2nd, you organized this walk.
Yeah.
And it was a really, really big deal. Maybe bigger than you thought it would be.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? You showed up and it was gigantic. And I remember that day admiring how brave you were, in doing this and putting it all together and speaking. What were your emotions like that day? Was there were there points where you were like overwhelmed or were you able to draw on some of the courage that you needed or?
Absolutely. That's a good question. So I guess I'll give you that's a little background of June 2nd, and that will kind of answer that question. We planned that in less than 36 hours. you can imagine the amount of anxiety. Actually, I wouldn't say anxiety really, but there was a lot of frustration going on, and we had a couple setbacks with where we could start, where we couldn't start. People calling me off the hook. And mind you, I did have a couple guys that helped me out as well throughout, trying to bring this all together. But 36 hours goes like that. Goes like that. Maybe 3 hours of sleep the night before. And probably the worst thing is the Barcelona Police Department called me every 2 hours trying to figure out how many people were coming. And even to this day, Officer Miller, claims I lied to him. I talked about 500, 600 people. But yeah, during that moment in time, it wasn't until I was actually at the park, as a few of you that were there, when you guys were strolling in, that's when I realized how big it was. So obviously I was in the front. When we left, there was probably about 500, 600 people in the parking lot. And I was like, all right, this is cool. And you start seeing people hop on the line, hop in the march. And as the crowd was coming through, veterans, and I turned around, and I was like, oh snap. I was like, I think the whole town is here. And I started seeing people's faces from different towns. And what I realized in that moment was that we created something very beautiful. At that moment in time, that was actually only the 6th march that happened in the state of New Jersey. The first one in Morris County. And it was, maybe the first or second one that actually happened in any suburb of New Jersey. So it was a big deal. Like Governor Murphy gave us a shout out on his briefing the following day. It was fantastic. But going into it, was I nervous? I don't really get nervous that much. I think I just more so just kind of get in my head, and I'm just like, man, I just want this to kind of go well. But it's more like, I put pressure on myself. Like, this got to go well. This got to be great. And it turned out to be just that. And so, for those of you that did show up, thank you. For those of you that couldn't be there, thank you. For those of you who just having those tough conversations, thank you. And for those of y'all that still showing love regardless, thank you. But to your point, yes, it was a very very weird moment. I never been through anything like that. So.
Mr. Bush is never short of questions. You got anything? I'd like to put you on the spot.
No problem. I choose love.
Nice.
All right. Make it a little bit, make myself a little uncomfortable. So, I've come to realize, over the past year especially, that I'm not really aware of my privilege and some of the things that I do completely inadvertently. So I want you to tell me, based on your perspective, what are some things that I should be looking out for in my life? Ways that I can just do better at being a better person and living the diversity that I hope I'm trying to project.
That's a great question. Great question. I assume that we're all kind of at that moment too, where how can we be better? But my first thing is that everybody's always ignorant to what we're talking about, right? So what you don't know and what you're kind of oblivious to, that'll be the first thing. So I always encourage people to read, right? Read the article, look at the stats, because people will sit there and say, oh well, let's take the police brutality for example, right? I'm not going to sit there and say, oh, cops are the same, right? Let's take police brutality because that's that situation that was kind of thrown at us this past summer. People sit there and say, oh, well, people of white descent are killed more than black people. That's a true stat. But then I'll tell you to look up the stat that says how many unarmed people are killed. I'll tell you this, I actually put the stat of what's the rate at which they are killed. And I think those things will surprise you more. So I think that first start with reading. Start with fact check. And don't believe everything you see on Twitter and Instagram. Oh my gosh, that's probably the worst. Do not believe everything you see. And you know how many times I have to fact check people? Where they start posting something and they go, oh, they see a fake tweet from some congressman. I'm just like, it's not even real. It's not even real. First reading. doing your research to learn and to read. Be open-minded. The second is asking questions. Asking questions. So if you know that we're going through a tough time as far as the racial injustice, or for lack of better terms, the racial injustice that happens to African Americans, talk to your African American friends. Ask them about their experience, because they're not going to lie about their experience. They're not going to lie about their level of uncomfort. They're not going to lie about when you said a racist joke to them one day, how it made them feel. Ask questions. Ask questions and ask more questions. Because I'm going to be honest, as an African American man, I love it when somebody from another race asks me a question. I love it because to me, I think that means you're genuinely interested in learning, and that means you're trying to be better. Like I said, we're ignorant to what we don't know. And we're even more ignorant to the things that we don't know. And so, third and foremost, I would sit there and say, don't believe everything you see on social media. That's probably the biggest thing. But yeah, between reading, asking a lot of questions, and where do you go from here? Nipping it in the bud, starting in your own households. I think that when it comes to people who have, like you have young kids yourself, you have teenage daughters, and and having those tough conversations within your own household sets the stage for what you're willing to tolerate and what you're willing to tolerate for somebody else, what you're allowing somebody else to do in front of your eyes. And so there's been times where I have to check people in that moment, whether black, white, Hispanic, Asian, whatever the case, to say, hey, man, that's not right. It's not necessarily an attack on me, but I'm letting you know that I'm not going to tolerate that in my presence. I date back to when 9/11 happened. Obviously, none of you guys were alive, but the rest of us were alive during 9/11, and we're fortunate enough to still remember that moment of where we were, that moment in time, what we were doing. We heard about it, and I was, I believe, in 5th grade, and everybody's being sent home that day, and I was the only one left in my classroom. My grandmother called me. She was like, "Hey, you in school?" I was like, "Well, yeah, where else do I go?" And I was like, "Come pick me up." She said, "No." I said, "Why?" She said, "Well, building that hit your school, so you better sit there and learn something." And I was like, "Oh, okay. All right. Okay." So me and the teacher had lunch together. We became best friends that day. And it was a very eventful day. The following day, though, and that's why I want to talk about more about the following day. That's when the jokes started coming in. And we realized ultimately what it happened. Mind you, we're in 5th grade, right? So we're no more than 11 this time. "Oh, so-and-so's a terrorist. Oh, you look like somebody from your family. Oh, this. Oh, you must be a terrorist. Oh, you from here. Oh, you must be a terrorist." And at that moment I knew. I was like, whoa. Whoa. Look at how fast we're willing to crack the jokes. Look how fast we're willing to put somebody in a position where they're very uncomfortable. Look how fast we're willing to put somebody down. And so to this day, honestly, I've never cracked a joke like that. And I hope that you guys haven't either. And if you have, I hope that you would go back to that person and apologize. Because I know what it's like to be in their shoes. Because I know what it's like to hear that you talk white. I know what it's like to hear of you're ghetto, you're a thug, you're uneducated. I think that's part of the reason why I probably go so hard to change that narrative. Because I'm not a thug. I don't have to talk some way to sound black. Black is not a sound, it's a color. But in that moment, I realized that somebody was able to sympathize with me. Another culture was able to sympathize with the way I felt since I started going to school in Pacific. And that's what kind of hit home for me a little bit. I started realizing that there's a lot of things that privileged people are, one, not willing to learn, and don't want to learn. And so after that day actually, 9/11, I took it upon myself to talk to more of my Middle Eastern friends, and stuff like that, to Pakistan, Afghanistan, Turkey, all that stuff like that. Because I wanted to understand their family structure. I wanted to know about the Quran. I wanted to know how many times they prayed a day. I wanted to know more about their ethnic festivities. And that's why I took my approach. And it's weird because I was only 11 at the time. Next I know one of my closest friends was Middle Eastern. And I wasn't just eating kebab paradise. You know? I was really living it. I was really living it. And so, even going back to like what you said, you gotta take the time. You gotta take the time. Obviously, we're all in very different situations, different places in our lives. We all come from different backgrounds. That's what's so beautiful. And we know that we're able to unify, but with unity comes understanding. I have to understand you look very different than I do. You look very different. You look very different than I do. I'm still going to show you the same love you show me back. You know, I'm going to ask you about your culture, and I'll you tell me, ask me about mine. I'm going to ask you the same thing, and I hope that you give me the same respect. I'm going to show you a lot of love, and I hope you get the same thing in return. And I think that once we start having those conversations like that feeling comfortable, all of a sudden they're not. I don't have a problem with asking anybody where they're from. I don't have a problem with asking anybody about their cultural experience. I don't have a problem with asking somebody about the problem that their home, their country seems to be having, whether it's the genocides in, Nigeria or Al Qaeda and Afghanistan or something. I don't have a problem asking people those questions because I know that no matter what, the love doesn't change. The respect doesn't change. If anything, you're going to respect me more because I'm trying to know more about you. You're going to respect me more because I'm showing you genuine love. Any questions?
When someone is so passionate about something, sometimes another person disagrees, but sometimes they really interested. How would you respond to somebody about who's so passionate about something and you know the other person?
I always say that when you're in positions like that, if you have somebody like here in a conversation, and you know that they're very wrong, do that person a favor, just listen for a second. And I'll tell you why, right? How many of you have been in an argument with your friend? Or your parents? Let's say parents. How many of you have been in an argument with your parents? Raise your hand, right? I want you to try to straighten them. Okay? I learned at a very young age and worked for me ever since I stopped getting my butt beat and everything ever since then. When a person is yelling at you and they're really loud, talk about this. People match energies. They match energies. So you ever notice that if your mom were coming, how come you didn't do your laundry? How come you did this? How come you take out the trash? And if you wrote, be like, hey, mom. All right, cool. Now to the parents in the building, they're probably like, oh my God, my kid ever did that. Oh my gosh, I'm probably
I'm getting angry.
But you can't match their energy. You know they're wrong. You know what you have to say is right? But at the same time, they would never think they're wrong until they're shown a different way, right? Like I'm gonna keep thinking that problem is right until somebody shows me that's wrong. But how can we even get to that point if we're both just be like, no, well, this is stupid, this is stupid, this is stupid, no, that's not where we're at. And that's the problem we're having with a lot of even our friends. So you find that there'll be a lot of friends that are actually on the same side. They're still having stupid arguments. How many of you guys find that? Right? Isn't it crazy? So what you have to do is you take that person and you still go, okay, like, look, I'm listening to what you have to say, but as respect, I hope that you would listen to what I'm going to say. And to be honest, what you might feel like they're all the way wrong about, there might be a couple things where you might be like, oh, that's interesting. You might learn a thing or two. And I always learn to be open-minded like that. Like, trust me, there's a lot of my friends who are into political debates and this and that and forth, and I'm just like, okay. But I learned something. I learned a thing or two. I don't want to learn a thing or two sometimes, but I do. I do. Well, guys, thank you so much for having me.
I think everyone's parents are probably parked outside.
Yeah.
Where's my kid?
Thank you guys so much for having me. Obviously, you know, every single one of you guys, you have access to me or to conversation like this through my Instagram, Respect Life Foundation. If you want to reach out, if you're having a tough time, if you're going through like a mental hump or something like that, that's what we're there for. That's what I'm here for. I'm always here to be a voice of reason, guidance, and more importantly, just spread some love. So I appreciate you guys for having me, and hopefully you took a couple things from tonight.
We give it up for him.
Oh, this is really
I thought, Jabari, thanks again for coming. We're so proud of so many of our alumni, and you're at the top of the list, man. We're really proud of you, all the good that you're doing, how you want to change the world, and we're lucky that you share it with us through speaking here, peanut butter and jelly drives, and all this other stuff. So, thank you, and I want to thank all you guys for coming, because you could have been home, you know, watching Cobra Kai on Netflix, or eating copious amounts of cereal, which I'm probably gonna do when I get home. But you chose to be here to like open your mind and learn some things, and you guys always show up big time for our service night. So you guys rule. Go home, get some rest. When your parents yell at you, talk in a calm voice.
Works like a charm.
Work like a
You
charm.
work in a mental hospital, that's how you de-escalate somebody.
Right. So for those of you who are virtual, I miss you so much. It's nice to see you just for a little bit.
I know.
And those of you here every other week, I wish I saw more of you, but we'll get there someday, guys. So thanks again, Jabari, and thank you everybody for coming. Okay.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, guys. I got something for you when you leave, when we walk out. You guys are free to go or say hi.